What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Prophecy Misfits Podcast. This is episode 379. Strike them down. Yeah, that's depending on which view you're coming from. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, and we're gonna unfortunately take that from the bad side of things. Anyways, but welcome in. This is what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We get together and we watch for the crazy things that are happening around this world. That's just spinning just round and round downward towards dark dystopian takeover. It's crazy. But for us who have Jesus Christ, this should bring us encouragement, should bring us hope, and it should bring us a willingness and a fire in our guts to go out there and share the gospel with as many people as we can. So, welcome and glad to have you guys here. Thank you for joining me. And yeah, if you're new here, glad to have you. And hopefully you stick around. We're a rambunctious crew. We do things a little bit different around here. And again, our whole goal is to just try and take everything that we can from a view of just give us the facts. We just want to know what's going on. We don't want bias or leaning. We actually want to know what is really going on, not what gives us comfort or feeds our particular view of things. And yeah, so hopefully you stick around if that's your bag. Yeah, so good stuff. But yeah, strike them down. Plenty of things to talk about. We're going to start off with a couple of just ridiculous things regarding Trump's ego. We'll talk about that. We also got, I always get a bunch of people, why don't you ever talk about the positive things? Well, we'll talk about something positive today, shall we? In regards to Supreme Court ruling against the Colorado conversion therapy ban. So we'll talk about that. It's good stuff, actually. Excuse me. We also got updates regarding fuel and gas and oil and stuff like that. Yes, we're still talking about that. It is a very important thing that we stay up to date on what's happening there. So we're not going to peel off of that yet unless something dramatically changes. But yeah, we're going to talk about that. We also got updates, mainly Europe, that's starting to go panic mode. So we'll talk about that. We got a bunch of airline flights getting canceled because of jet fuel issues. We also got some updates when it comes to Cuba and Russia and China oil stuff. A Kuwaiti power and desalination plant was hit. So it looks like desalination plants are starting to become targets now, which that is very not good. We'll just put it that way. Terrible English, but it gets the point across. It's very not good. We also got updates regarding helium issues. A report has come out that's pretty much points at the United States for hitting another school, killing more children than they already did. So we'll talk about that. We got Finland, who wants to do an audit of weapons that the United States is handling when it comes to NATO. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We also got updates, an update regarding more confirmation that the Iranian protests that were the jumping board for this situation in Iran were not organic. It was actually something that the Mossad was pulling off. So more confirmation of something that we kind of believed around here. So we'll talk about that. Pete Hegseth was looking to invest in defense contractors before starting the war. Shocking. He's also praying to God to give him the ability to what's the quote? He says, give him the ability and endurance for the trial ahead, unbreakable unity, and overwhelming violence of action against those who deserve no mercy. Yeah, so we'll talk about that as well. That's not good. We also got updates regarding ICE agents and stuff. We haven't had an update on that in a minute, so there's a few things we're going to talk about with that. Robert Morris has been released from jail. Yeah, good stuff there. Not at all. Trump confirmed what we believe the ballroom thing was about, which has to do with the bunker underneath. We'll talk about that. The Department of Justice is giving $1.25 million of taxpayer money to Michael Flynn. We'll talk about that. And then NYPD is saying that they don't have, they're not required to protect citizens. So, fun stuff. Plenty of things to talk about. A few other things along the way. Anyways, hope everybody is doing All right, tonight I can see the food talk is already going with lemon pound cake and pizza. That sounds like a Tuesday night that I wish I was invited to. That sounds great. Anyways, with all that going on, let's go ahead and get into housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
No, thank you. Sleeping.
Housekeeping?
All right, usual spiel. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. So if you guys can do me solid and like, share, subscribe, I'd certainly appreciate it. Again, our whole goal is to try and get out there, reach people who want to know what's going on, and for especially those who don't have their hope and their salvation in Jesus. Hopefully we can give them the gospel along with it, and they can give their lives to the Lord and praise the Lord, that they will then have the hope that we do around here. They can be a part of the crazy people that when they see the dark, crazy things happening, they get excited and encouraged about it. Imagine that. Also, if you guys want to follow along on Rumble and Telegram, those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be backup live streaming over on Rumble. So make sure you guys follow over there. If you have that, Telegram, post updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format, I throw up on Telegram. So if you have that as well, feel free to follow along. If not, no worries. Just make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on what is happening with the Wretched Watchmen world of things. Find the latest podcasts and live streams. You'll find the announcement page, the free book to download, and all that other snazzy jazz, cat's pajamas, bee's knees stuff that you want to find there. Whatever. I just saw this dude's name in the chat. Dreadlock Warriors. That's pretty epic, dude. I like that name. That's cool. Glad to have you here. And last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel is now monetized. Doesn't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. It runs solely off of your guys' generous donations. Again, we do everything free around here. That's, in my opinion, how it should be. Especially when you're trying to get the gospel out and try and get people to Jesus. Why on earth are you putting it behind a paywall? Guess what? You're blocking off the people who don't have Jesus, and you're not giving them the opportunity to actually hear what's going on because they're not going to pay for it. So yeah, that's not how it should be. So you guys are the ones through your donations and your prayers and whatnot that make all of this happen. So thank you guys. Truly, thank you for your support in all of this. Yeah. Also, got to throw this out there. For those who know, today is Good Tuesday. And so I just want to make sure that we recognize that today is Good Tuesday. Tomorrow is the beginning of Passover. Tomorrow's Passover. And this is one of those years where this year's Passover and Good Tuesday and everything actually falls in line with the timeline of crucifying and resurrection of Jesus according to the biblical timeline. And if anybody of those who know, biblical scripture points to the fact that Jesus Christ was actually crucified on a Wednesday. So pretty interesting. So yeah, today is Good Tuesday and tomorrow is Passover. With all that stuff, I have if you're confused by all of that, I'm sure there's some people that are. I have a video that I did discussing all of that I did last year around this time for Passover and whatnot. So I think I'll post the link on that on my YouTube and Telegram tomorrow. So if you guys haven't seen that, you can check it out. And I go over what I mean by that using the scripture to point to it. So good stuff. Wow. Jacques, I haven't seen you in a long time. Glad to have you back. Hopefully you're doing all right. Thanks for being here. Yes, Gracie, tomorrow is Passover indeed. So good times. Well, joyous times for those, again, who know. All right. Kylie Doodle. Good to see you, Kylie. Glad you're here. Triple DX. Jesus of Nazareth, our blessed Lord. Amen. Amen indeed. All right. Yeah, I think that's all we got when it comes to announcements. Let's see here. All right, let's go ahead and get into this. And Timo, wow. Oh, you can't sleep. Okay. I was like, isn't it like past your bedtime, man? Good to see you, Timo. I'm glad you're here. Hopefully you can get some sleep here soon. Got stuff to do tomorrow, I'm sure. All right, let's go ahead and get into the first thing that we got going on. Let's start off with some ridiculous stuff, shall we? And we have this here. Omaha-based Union Pacific unveils number 4547 locomotive honoring President Trump. I kid you not. They're going to go ahead and do an actual train design for Trump. It just, the ridiculous just gets ridiculous. Oh, Timo is sleeping. Helen is awake. Okay. The name is Timo, so. Well, hopefully you can get some sleep, Helen. I'm sure you got some stuff you got to do tomorrow, too. But good to see you, and thank you for being here. So, yeah, feeding more of Trump's ego and, again, showing that we live in an authoritarian, narcissistic government. We have a train design coming with Trump's name on it. It says Omaha-based Union Pacific this month unveiled a celebratory party favors 2 new locomotives that honor the country's amazing history and the people behind its unparalleled success story. Then why on earth are they putting Trump's name on there? Because he's as furthest from success and amazing histories can be. Number 1776, America 250, will feature an American flag waving against the backdrop of a traditional armor yellow Union Pacific locomotive and the America 250 logo. The second newest commemorative locomotive is number 4547 to celebrate Donald Trump. 4577, of course, alludes to Trump serving the 45th and 47th president of the United States. Design plans for the locomotive feature 2 flags. One will feature a current U.S. flag with its 50 stars and one that features a 13 star for the original colony. Donald J. Trump will be printed in golden color yellow lettering next to the Union Pacific logo. Just at what point have we come to this where everything literally is having his name and face stamped upon it? Just this is what we've come to here in America, and it's just ridiculous. If that's not enough, how about this? Trump releases first renderings of massive Miami high-rise presidential library. Did you guys see this thing? Looks like a giant warp speed needle, if you catch my drift. Of course, has his name on it. It says President Donald Trump's foundation released a teaser video for his proposed presidential library. You can find this video anywhere at this point. In downtown Miami Monday, revealing plans for a skyscraper with a fully capitalized Trump emblazoned atop, a presidential jet in the lobby, and an amphitheater where audience will face a golden statue of the president. Where's the thing?
You are terrible.
And replicas of the White House, including the Rose Garden and a ballroom he's building where the East Wing once stood. The planned tower dwarfs all the surrounding Miami buildings in the rendering. The adjacent Freedom Tower, the former refugee center for Cuban asylum seekers and now a museum, appears about a quarter of the size of the Trump monument. Look at that thing. So it kind of looks like the Freedom Tower that they built in New York. Funny, it's called the Freedom Tower when that's not only the last thing the United States has anymore, but New York specifically. But it looks like a giant needle, which perfect for him because he's the vax daddy, remember? And yeah, all that good stuff. For those who support Trump, then you don't remember, but he actually called himself the father of the vax and all that. So it says the name Trump, the signature logo atop the presidential real estate development, sits near the top of the library tower. Trump plans a tower as tall or nearly as tall as anything around it in downtown Miami, overlooking Biscayne Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. He has not said what will occupy the upper floors. He just came out and said it's going to be a hotel. Of course, he's got to make money off of it, right? In a text message Monday night, Eric Trump said people wouldn't be living there, no residential. A replica of the Air Force One, the presidential plane, is in the showcase piece of the lobby off the Biscayne Boulevard. The government of Qatar is donating to the United States a jet to be used as Air Force One, reportedly with permission for Trump to use the plane once he leaves the White House. A golden statue of Trump with his first fist raised stands on a stage in the auditorium inside the building. The video also has a hint of a Trump statue outside overlooking Biscayne Boulevard. A brief glimpse at the tower's front entrance also shows the bottom half of a golden statue with only legs and shoes visible. Trump's image will be a feature of the exterior of the building with jumbo video screens showing his face in the footage. I just oh my word. This is what's acceptable This is what's accepted. Imagine, if you will, if Biden came out and did this. The pastors would be going bonkers, bananas, blitzkrieg. They'd be going just out of their mind, insane. But because it's Trump, all good. It's all good. It's just, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It says Trump's library will have a ballroom that appears to match the renderings of the ballroom Trump is planning for the White House on land where the east wing of the White House stood before the president had it demolished. The Miami Tower also features a replica Oval Office and replica Rose Garden. And there we go. Check that out. That's straight from the rendering of the video that was posted by the Trump family regarding this thing. That's right. There is a massive golden statue of Trump in there. But again, please come at me and tell me how this is all good. Feel free, because guess what? If you're one of those people that says this is A-okay and it's all good, no, he's just laughing and having a good time, then all you're doing is making yourself look like a fool. That's all you're doing. You're making yourself look like a fool. Because we are at this point now, and it just immediately points me to when it's talking about the scripture regarding pride and how it leads to the fall and everything like that. And this is the representative of our country, and it is nearing the time when it's going to reach its fall. And so it's coming. It's coming. That's what I see when I see things like this, is when your leader and your administration, which is representative, quote unquote, representative of a country, and this is how they act and this is the personality that they have, it's so prideful. It's only a matter of time before we fall down. That's how I view it. Some people might say you're taking it out of context. Don't necessarily think that I am. It says Trump's Library Foundation was granted nonprofit status during an extraordinarily quick approval process by the IRS. Who would have guessed that? Much of the public funds the foundation has raised thus far has been through high-profile settlements with media companies after Trump sued them. So basically the money is coming from the companies which Trump has sued. Imagine that. The foundation is planning to raise nearly $1 billion over the next 3 years while Trump is still in office, tax filing show. Presidential libraries are one of the few ways sitting presidents can solicit foreign donations without ever having to disclose their donors. Yikes. I don't know what you want me to say at this point, man. This is not one of those things where it's just, again, I don't get it nearly as much as I used to, but I still get it every once in a while. The people that either comment or email me saying, you just have TDS, your Trump derangement syndrome. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't know how pointing out glaringly obvious problems, corruption, and narcissism is a form of TDS. At least I'm not somebody that wants to hide from the truth and the reality of the situation. But this is what's going on. And again, I still think that when this pride and the maneuvers that Trump and this administration is moving, and again, we know the puppets of what's going on, but that does not negate the fact that most of the people in the Trump administration are extremely narcissistic and egotistical and prideful. It's going to lead to the destruction of this country. I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that. All right, let's talk about something positive, shall we? Let's move on to something positive. It says Supreme Court rules against ban on alphabet conversion therapy. I hate that conversion therapy. It's not conversion therapy. Trying to talk sense into somebody is not conversion therapy, but that's what they call it. It says the Supreme Court ruled Tuesday that Colorado's ban on alphabet conversion therapy unlawfully regulated the speech of a therapist who wanted to counsel patients against being transgender, marking the court's latest decision against alphabet advocates, though the ruling still allows for ban on physical conversion therapies like electroshock, which Yeah, we shouldn't be doing that either. It says the Supreme Court ruled 8-1 in Childs versus Salazar, a case on whether Colorado's conversion therapy ban, referring to practices that aim to influence a patient's sexual orientation or gender identity, unlawfully regulated speech. It says justice rules Colorado's law suppresses speech based on viewpoint and seeks to silence a viewpoint Childs wishes to express. The disagreeing with lower courts that found the state was justified in barring Childs from counseling people against being transgender. So you guys can look more into that if you want to get the details of it. But there was a recent law that went through in Colorado, basically barring quote unquote conversion therapy, which means all pastoral counseling or Christian counseling or even just secular counseling that was there to try and get people away from the transgender stuff and the homosexual lifestyle and all that stuff. It was banning them from being able to talk some sense into them, to point them away from the sinful lifestyle and the unnatural way of living and sexual orientation and everything like that. So Colorado put that ban in place. And then a Christian counselor, Childs, she took it to a higher court. Supreme Court actually ruled in favor of banning the ban, or ruling against the ban, however you want to put it, which is a good thing. It's positive. We need to take the small wins when they come. And what's going on? Oh, jeez, I'm not even going there. So we need to take the small wins when they come. So this is something to celebrate, at least for the time being. And then hopefully in the small window, it's probably going to be a small window of opportunity before another ban comes in on this stuff. That these counselors and whatnot work quickly to make sure that they get these people away from this lifestyle and a natural lifestyle that they live. So, and sinful ways. So praise the Lord for that one. So for all the people that come at me and say that you don't talk about anything positive, there was something positive right there. Jalapeno, I didn't go there. Yeah. Yeah, let's not. Kind of on the same playing field as that. I do want to point something out. I don't have anything to bring up on it, but it is something that I was recently brought to my attention. And if you guys remember, for those who have been around my channel for a while, you know, several years back when we started to see states introduce these bills to quote unquote protect the kids from adult websites or websites that have a percentage of harmful, quote unquote, harmful content and stuff like that. They're starting to introduce like digital ID laws and age verification or internet ID, which is the best way to put it for that. And if you guys remember correctly, the way that I said is they're going to start introducing it this way as a way to protect the kids in order to get parents on board or get the people on board who usually are against digital ID, but because it's for the kids and protecting them from harmful content or pornography or anything like that, they're going to all of a sudden start supporting it. Well, we have a legitimate case that proves that this is exactly what's going on. So, if you guys don't know, in Minnesota, they just shot down a bill. It was a split. All Republicans voted for it. All Democrats voted against it. Whenever you see something like that, pay attention, because that's usually an indicator that it was meant for it to happen that way to stir up division. So keep that in mind. But it was a Minnesota bill to ban, or not ban, but add ID verification infrastructure to any site that contains 25% or more adult content. And if anybody knows how broad and how that can be abused, which we've talked about before, you know this is a very slippery slope of a good way to start introducing digital ID for websites, because all of a sudden it becomes sites with 25% adult content. Then it becomes 25% harmful content with no definition of what that means. And that's when you start seeing websites that are like social media websites where you can post stuff like that, and then they have a whole bunch of other stuff that's not, and then you're going to need an ID to access that, and then it starts the slippery slope. And we've talked about that before. Well, it worked, and I'll give you one case. This past Sunday, somebody sent it to me saying, here we go. This past Sunday, Pastor Kurt Reed, brought this up on his prophecy update, and he went ballistic because he wanted that bill to pass to protect the kids. He fell for the narrative play. And of course, he does his stipulation of, well, there's problems on both sides. And then following that, immediately screams, but the Democrats. And so, again, he fell exactly for what we were warning, exactly for the play at hand, and he doesn't even realize it. So somebody who's been talking about the digital ID for years, all of a sudden is now in favor of it because it's to protect the kids. You see how that works? So, again, this is one of those things we know around here. We know that we don't want kids accessing that website, but that's not for the government to decide. That's something for parents to actually be parents. And we understand in this day and age, parents aren't actually being parents, but it's still not the government's responsibility. But that's exactly how Satan wants to work. Knocks down the parents, government steps in, becomes dystopian, becomes one world. It's a very obvious playbook if you can see it, and it worked perfectly. And now you're seeing I talked about it when it comes to somebody like Patrick Wood, who spent 6, 7, 8 years pounding his fist against the dystopian AI takeover. And now he's endorsing people use AI. He uses AI all the time. He says you need to use it, otherwise you'll fall behind. It's the same thing with what's going on now with Kurt Reed, who's been talking about digital ID and everything like that for years. And now he's in favor of it because he fell for the narrative of protecting the kids. And it's like, this is why you can't bend. This is why you need to hold to the foundations of what we believe in and what we're warned to look for, so you don't fall for the narratives based on it. And again, it's one of those things where I'm not taking shots at people. I'm just telling you that this is what happens. I'm giving you live examples of what happens when you hitch yourself to an unbased, ungrounded reality that doesn't exist, that's based upon bias. And he can sit there and say that he's not connected to well, both sides are bad. We know that. But it's very obvious that that's not what he actually believes and holds to, because he's falling for the political narrative. So, again, there's just a live example of what I was warning about years ago, and boom, perfect. There we go. Satan's doing very well. All right. Let's move on to gas, shall we? I hate these websites, the auto update. Okay, let's do some gas stuff. We'll just kind of go through these just to make sure you guys are well aware of what's going on when it comes to the fuel situation. We are still very much in an energy crisis, and it's only getting worse. And so first up, gas supply disrupted in Balochistan. I think it's Balochistan. I think that's how you pronounce it. Probably not. Give me grace. As terrorists blow up pipeline in Harnai. This is Pakistan. So Pakistan's now having their oil infrastructure getting hit. They're just terrorists at this point. I don't know who did it, but either way, the repercussions of it, not good. Gas supply in Quetta and Upper Balochistan was severely disrupted on Monday after terrorists blew up an 18-inch diameter gas pipeline of Sui Southern Gas Company, SSGC. According to an initial report from the bomb disposal squad, the incident was clearly a case of sabotage. The terrorists planted explosives beneath the pipeline and detonated them, completely destroying a large section of the pipeline. Spokesperson for Sui Southern Gas Company confirmed the attack, stating that technical teams were immediately dispatched to the site. The teams managed to close the main valve and extinguish the fire, preventing further damage. However, the gas supply has been entirely suspended. So, again, this is one of those things where they could say terrorists and stuff like that, but when we continue to see piece by piece global energy infrastructure get torn down by things like this, we can understand that there is clearly an agenda. There is a script. There is an order of events that are playing out in front of our very eyes right now when it comes to what I believe we are currently seeing an energy reset, a global energy reset. And I stand by that. I don't know what the outcome or the ending result of it will be, but it's clear that they are resetting something in the energy side of things, and we need to make sure that we recognize that. Now, of course, one of the major losers of what's going on right now, which I apologize if you currently live in Europe, but your whole European Union, the collection of the European groups over there, you guys are losing bad right now. It says Brussels says Europeans should consider traveling less to avoid energy shortages. So, energy crisis enters energy reset, which could, in fact, we don't know for sure. We've seen a lot of indicators that say it's trending in that way, but we don't know yet. But this is another indicator that it's trending towards energy lockdowns. And it's very interesting that they make a connection to the COOF situation through this. It says EU commission letter reflects growing fears that Iran war is sparking an all-out global economic crisis. It says the European Commission is asking member countries to consider cutting back on oil and gas use, especially in the transport sector, in preparations for prolonged disruption to energy supplies from the Iran war. The request made by EU Energy Chief Dan Jorgensen reflects fear that the conflict in the Persian Gulf is graduating from a price problem to an all-out energy supply crisis with serious implications for global economy. In a letter to national energy ministers seen by Politico, Jorgensen said that the national government should consider voluntary demand-saving measures with particular attention to the transport sector. It always starts with voluntary until it becomes mandatory. We should recognize that. It says that could mean governments asking citizens to drive or fly less to save fuel for more essential purposes, as it's already happening in some Asian countries. It says for now, European countries have yet to invoke demand-saving measures, which were a staple of the 1970s oil crisis, which saw governments impose gasoline rationing and drive-free Sundays. The International Energy Agency, remember, we went over their letter that they sent out about the 10 ways to cut back on all of this energy stuff, and it all has to do with like working from home, odd even days based on tags when it comes to gas rationing or when to drive, public transportation, less travel, all that stuff. The International Energy Agency has already laid out a list of proposals for demand reduction this time around, including encouraging home working and lowering highway speed limits. We should be very good at this because this is exactly what happened during the COOF situation in 2020 and 2021. Then, this came out today. Top Brussels official urges Europeans to work from home and drive less. So it goes from reduced travel, now it's let's work from home and drive less. Energy Commissioner said that the oil crisis triggered by Iran war will bring lengthy upheaval in a speech reminiscent of COOF pandemic. In a speech reminiscent of the COOF pandemic. This is just obvious at this point. I also do find it interesting that it's called the Iran War, which I understand why it is and whatnot, but it's called the Iran War, even though it was the United States and Israel that started it. Pretty interesting. Just random thought. The European Commission has urged people to work from home, drive and fly less, and for EU countries to urgently roll out renewables, as it warned of a prolonged energy crisis as a result of the conflict in the Gulf. In a speech which echoes of the early days of the COOF pandemic, EU Energy Chief Dan Jorgensen said Europe was facing a very serious situation with no clear end in sight. And that's important for us to recognize because right now there is still no end to the situation when it comes specifically to the energy thing. There's 500 different things that we could talk about when it comes to that, but specifically to the energy situation, there's no clear end to this thing. It's continuously getting worse, and we have things that happen, just like the pipeline that just blew up in Pakistan. There's still energy infrastructure in the Gulf. There's still energy infrastructure in Iran. There's still energy infrastructure in Russia and Ukraine that are still going up in flames right now. There's still stuff happening here in the United States. Not as significant as those, but it's still happening. That's causing issues when it comes to the energy. And the last of the ships to drop off oil that they started their treks before this whole thing happened is about done. There's only a few ships left out there, and then it's done. So the last of the deliveries are done as well. So there is no clear end when it comes to this. So expect it to get worse. Plus, there's also the other fact, which we talked about on Saturday, here in the United States. That's great that we may have all these refineries going up and starting and everything like that, but we have a water problem here. And so if we don't have water sustainment, that means we don't have drinking water, but that also means the LNG plants can't run because of it. So very important. It says the more you can do to save oil, especially diesel, especially jet fuel, the better we are off, Jorgensen said, confirming an earlier report by Politico that Brussels wanted Europeans to travel less. He urged member countries to follow the advice of the International Energy Agency, which he said included work from home where possible, reduce highway speed limits by 10 kilometers, encourage public transportation, alternate private car access, increase car sharing, and adopt efficient driving practices. Again, voluntary for now. Just wait until it becomes mandatory. Again, and it's pretty interesting. This is all centering around Europe. Europe is in dire straits when it comes to energy, and I still stand by the thing, to the idea that they are piece by piece, brick by brick, nut and bolt by nut and bolt, dismantling the European countries right now to knock them down. I still stand by that. I haven't seen anything that has caused me to change my way of thinking. I continue to see things that only add more weight to it. Says today's talks between ministers ended with no concrete proposals, although Jorgensen promised the Commission would be announcing a package of EU-level measures in the near future. And that's where the danger comes from. Jorgensen promised that the Commission would be announcing a package of EU-level, European Union, collective measures in the near future. Will those be mandatory? We must wait and see. Either way, if you're in Europe, you got some problems that are coming right down the pike. So we got to be careful. Yeah, Helen, thank you, Zach. We're living in Europe. Yeah, you guys are right in the heart of it. The Lord's got you, though. The Lord will provide. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be comfortable, but he will provide. That's one of those things that sometimes people misconstrue is, yes, the Lord does provide for those who have faith in him, but that does not necessarily mean it's going to be comfortable. So, but either way, he'll see you guys through. Appreciate you guys. That also leads to this. Thousands of flights canceled as jet fuel costs soar. So we're at the point now where they're saying travel less. And then on top of that, because of jet fuel prices as well as supply, they're going to start reducing significantly as well. It says airlines around the world are canceling thousands of flights after the war in Iran caused jet fuel prices to more than double. More than 1 in 20 flights scheduled to take off on Monday were canceled, according to aviation analytics company Cirium. That was almost twice the number this time last year and comes as the conflict in the Middle East squeezes the global supply of jet fuel and sends prices surging. Jet fuel costs 742 a metric ton a year, or metric ton a year ago. So 742 a metric ton a year ago, but now has topped 1,710. Wow. Going up by the day, too. Prices are rising as the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, through which a fifth of the world oil passes, chokes off supply. The UK is set to receive its last known shipment of jet fuel from the Middle East this week. Again, I think that's tomorrow. Those ships are supposed to be there. And it says Alex Makeris, an aviation analyst, warned that a serious jet fuel shortage is less than a week away across multiple different markets, including at some major European airport hubs. Mr. Makeris claims airports are informing airlines to prepare for a potential no fuel available here scenario. This is not just a Europe problem. International airlines from Asia, South America, Africa are working on contingency plans, which include attempted fuel stops en route to and from destinations as jet fuel shortages worsen to unprecedented levels and the price continues to surge. Airlines have confirmed that they will be cutting flights, including Air New Zealand, which cut 1,100 flights through to early May, and Scandinavian group SAS, which is canceling 1,000 next month. Both have said that these will mainly affect domestic routes. This is one of those things where I know there's a lot of people when they see this, it's like, okay, this is our last chance to go and take that trip that we want to do, but just keep in mind that if you're going to go and take that trip, and this, all I'm saying is just something to think about. There's a chance that if you go and take that trip to wherever you want to go, that by the time that you're ready to leave and go back home, you might be paying double, triple, or quadruple what you did to get there, or you might be waiting a while before you can find a flight that's going to make it there because of the jet fuel problem and they're canceling flights. So just keep that in mind. I know there's some people that are getting ready to travel for the summer and whatnot. Just something to think about, to plan for in the future in regards to that. I wonder how all this jet fuel issues are going to mess with all of the Prophecy Mafia Israel trips that they do. Yeah, just curious. United Airlines became the first major U.S. airline earlier this month to cancel flights because of soaring fuel costs, cutting about 5% of capacity on routes that are less profitable for the company. Scott Kirby, the chief executive of the U.S. airline, which is the world's biggest by capacity, told Bloomberg that passenger flights costs could soar by 20% if jet fuel prices stay high. Go away. Yeah. So we know that what they want to do, or I don't want to say that. We know based on a whole bunch of reports and speeches and everything from the globalists, over decades, something that they want to do is to stop travel. They want to keep people localized. They want to get them into a spot, into a box, and they want those people living there accordingly, whether that's through districts, whether that's through the cities, the 15-minute cities, whether that's through any other plans maybe they've talked about in the past that we've forgotten about, or plans that they haven't revealed to us yet. But we do know that a consistent talking point for these elites is they want to try and lock us down in our specific areas. They want to get people out of rural, that's a word that I have a problem with, rural areas, and into places where they're much easier to contain and to surveil and to control based on the situation. So again, it seems like one of the ways that they can do that is through travel bans, through energy lockdowns and everything like that. Plus, we know the energy reset, there's a lot more to it that can be done when it comes to the food supply, when it comes to the travel stuff, when it comes to population control, if you catch my drift, when it comes to the financial situation and introducing digital currency. All of these things are attached to energy. So something to keep in mind as we continue to watch these developments, specifically on energy. I know energy is not one of those things where it's, a fun topic to discuss, but energy is attached to everything, literally everything. We also have this. It says pressure mounts on Europe. Diesel supplies tankers are turned away. Tankers that were carrying diesel towards Europe have changed course at sea as the Iran war boosts prices and intensifies competition for supplies. It says tankers that were carrying diesel towards Europe have changed course at sea. And it says 4 tankers, the Alia, the Minerva Vaso, Grand A6, and Elka Delphi, recently loaded diesel-type fuel in the U.S. and started across the Atlantic, according to Vortexa and ship tracking data compiled by Bloomberg. The Alia was signaling Gibraltar, while the other 3 were showing Amsterdam. Since then, the ships have all made sharp turns, and Grand A6 is now signaling Lomé in the West African region or nation of Togo, while the other 3 vessels are heading southeast. Combined, they're carrying about 1.2 million barrels of diesel-type fuel, for DEXA data showed. So basically, they had a contract to ship diesel to Europe, but because of the crises, they probably got higher bids from other countries on their way to Europe, and decided they're going to transfer and take the higher bidding contract, which means they're sending sail towards the other countries. As bad a business, stunt that is. That's how it works when in these times like this. It says, although none of the ships are signaling Asian destinations, diesel prices have soared in that region. Some of these barrels could ultimately be heading for Eastern buyers, another sign of how the crisis is rippling through the global energy markets. Europe's time will come, but for now, it is Asia that is screaming the loudest, said Philip Jones-Lux, senior oil analyst at energy analytics firm Sparta Commodities, referring to diesel supplies. This is while some diesel cargoes from the U.S. have diverted away from Europe, many are currently en route, Vortexa data shows, until they get a higher contract bid, I'm sure. And also says any long-term disruptions to shipments from the Baltic port of Primorsk, which is over there in Russia, a major diesel export hub that's been attacked by Ukraine, would also tighten global supplies. So we talked about how Russia's cracking down on their exports as well. Plus, we have this. Speaking of Russia, U.S. allows Russian oil tanker to reach Cuba despite blockade. The tanker full of crude oil could reach its expected destination by Monday, providing a lifeline to the island amid intense U.S. pressure. So as we know, or maybe you don't, but as we know, Cuba has had an extensive problem keeping the lights on because of this oil blockade that the United States has put against them. And we know that Cuba's up next when it comes to what regarding the United States plans, the Trump administration plans to take over the country. This is part of their Operation Total Extermination plan that they're unrolling, which started with Venezuela. We know that they're going after Cuba. The DEA is getting things prepped to take out Petro in Colombia. We know the Ecuador situation because the president of Ecuador is a CIA asset. He was handpicked and put in place. And then we know that they're doing things over there, killing innocent lives and blowing up farms for no reason. This is part of their plan to wage war and to build the Technate region. And it's interesting because just 2 days ago, Marco Rubio came out and he was asked by reporters about what's going on with Cuba. And Marco Rubio, I mean, it's just blatant lies at this point. But again, they bank on people not actually doing their due diligence and their research. And anybody who supports this administration knows that they're not going to do that due diligence. They're just going to take whatever Marco Rubio says at face value. But he came out and said the reason why Cuba continues to have the power outages and the people are revolting against them is because Cuba has decided that they have mismanaged oil. And it's all their fault, the leadership's fault in Cuba because of all the power outages. And he said that the United States had nothing to do with that. But the actual evidence, which is so easily verifiable that you can verify it in 60 seconds using a search engine, says that the reason why Cuba doesn't have any oil and their power keeps going out is because the United States months ago put up an oil embargo and is taking any tankers sending oil to the country. Imagine that. So Marco Rubio lied through his teeth, but yet, again, for those who support Trump, they're just going to take whatever he says rather than actually doing 60 seconds of research. Because that's how long it takes to type something into. Yes, you can even find it on Google. And you can find that information on Google. So the United States Coast Guard is allowing a Russian tanker. Interesting that it's Russian, right? Because we know we have one of the biggest Russian assets sitting in the White House here in the United States. The United States Coast Guard is allowing a Russian tanker full of crude oil to reach Cuba, delivering a critical supply of energy to the island nation after months of an effective oil blockade by the Trump administration. The tanker, which is carrying an estimated 730,000 barrels of oil and is owned by the Russian government. It says the Russian ship's arrival would shift the trajectory of a rapid accelerating crisis in Cuba, buying the island nation at least a few weeks before its fuel reserves run out. The Trump administration has been enforcing what amounted to an oil blockade, which I don't know if anybody knows this. This is old school stuff. I didn't even know this until like a week ago. Oil blockades are technically, if you want to go old school military, oil blockades are technically a declaration of war, which is interesting. So it's not like a public declaration, but when you place an oil blockade on a country or other goods, it is basically a declaration of war, which is fascinating. If you're interested, go take a look at the history regarding embargoes like that or blockades. But yeah, so the Trump administration has been enforcing what was amounted to an oil blockade around Cuba since January, threatening nations that had been sending fuel to the country, and in one case, escorting a tanker heading towards Cuba away from the island. It says the U.S. oil blockade has been choking Cuba, leading to daily blackouts, severe gas shortages, soaring prices, and deteriorating medical care. We talked about this, I think it was on Saturday. We talk about this, where Trump is allowing private corporations that he's connected to, the owners of these corporations, to bring in oil for their businesses. However, he's not allowing the oil to go into, I don't know, run things like hospitals and clinics and doctors' offices. So the hospitals and the clinics and everything like that, which help keep people alive, aren't allowed to have oil. But if you do business with the Trump family, then you can go ahead and bring in private oil for that. So we talked about that on Saturday. It says Mr. Trump said this month that he believed that he will be having the honor of taking Cuba and suggested that he could target the island with military force after the Iran war. He says, I built this great military. He said in an investment conference on Friday, I said, you'll never have to use it, but sometimes you have to use it, and Cuba is next, by the way. Yeah, and he said that he can do whatever he wants to with that country, by the way. But he's not an authoritarian. No. He's against the globalists. We continue to get told that. I mean, I got pastors up the wazoo and prophecy experts that continue to tell me that he's one of the good guys and he's against the globalists. So everything is, I mean, we're at like 4,632D chess at this point. Trust the plan. Trust the plan. So again, we got innocent lives getting destroyed all because of globalist evil power trips happening by governmental puppets all around the world right now. And I hope people realize that. Stop picking a governmental side. Stop picking a president's side or a prime minister's side. Stop it. Get your booties up into the bleachers next to Jesus and be on his side. We don't need to be participating in the game, because the moment you participate in the game, you are giving consent. You are saying, I am okay with this, when we should not be okay with these things. I know I sound like a broken record. I get it. But sometimes people need it drilled into their head before they recognize it. Stop giving consent to these people. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to fix it or it's going to change anything. But we don't need to be giving consent to evildoers working with other evildoers to bring in Satan's evil doing. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Let's talk China, shall we? China sends diesel shipments to Philippines and Vietnam despite recent export ban. It says China has quietly started sending shipments of diesel and other fuels to energy-starved countries in Southeast Asia over the weekend, even after imposing strict export restrictions earlier this month. That was another thing that I've been told is this is destroying China. This is going to collapse China. This is Trump's 42D chess to take down China. Guess what? China's fine. So much so that even during an export ban, they're making deals to send energy to the other countries around them. Guess what's that's doing? That's taking other Asian countries and sending them right into the warm, comforting, oily arms of China. Imagine that. So, according to vessel tracking data, 2 tankers delivered more than 260,000 barrels of diesel to the Philippines, while another tanker carried around 100,000 barrels of distillate fuels to Vietnam. These deliveries could help ease acute fuel shortages in the region caused by the ongoing war in the Middle East. I believe I saw something today that both China and the Philippines got together to talk energy contracts to build an extensive alliance for energy between the two countries. It says this new shipment has taken many by surprise, just as last week China was banning domestic fuel exports because of soaring worldwide prices. Even though there are still some restrictions on export, the shipment indicates further cooperation with friendly nations on a more limited basis. The Philippines had issued a national emergency regarding their fuel shortage, with assistance from various countries being sought to alleviate their fuel shortages. Thus far, one of the largest sources for diesel fuel has been from China this month. I've also seen some stuff coming out. I know it's in Bangladesh. I saw it in Taiwan, Vietnam, and there's another country. I can't remember the name of it. But I saw that in several countries, people are lining up for days at their gas stations to get whatever fuel that they can during the fuel rationing. And they are burning American flags, not next to the gas station, but in the same region as basically a giant middle finger to us, to America, because of what they have done to their countries regarding the Iran situation. That's the thing, is these people out there understand who started this problem. And so they're sending us a message. It's interesting. People know where the problems are. They know where the problems are. All right. Now we have this. Doc says, I read a lot of different things regarding China and their economic issues, but perhaps China had reserves. China has the largest, by far, oil reserves in the entire world. Their oil reserves can stack up to half of the world. You can take half of the world's oil reserves and combine them, and China's reserves are still bigger than that. So that should tell you everything in regards to that. So, yeah, China's doing just fine. So when you be careful where you read stuff, because all Western media is going to say China's in a panic, China is hurting, China's economic disaster awaits, China this, China that. But that's not the reality of it. If you go down to the bare numbers, China's doing just fine. Doing just fine. So keep that in mind. The Western media loves to push the narratives regarding that. Now, speaking of major problems, if this continues, this will be a serious problem. It says Kuwaiti power and desalination plant hit in Iranian strike. Now, it says hit in Iranian strike. Iran denies that they were the ones that did it. We don't know. It could have been Iran. It could have been a false flag attack, which there's a lot of stuff saying that the United States and Israel is doing false flags on Gulf states to push this agenda forward. So it could have been Iran, could have been this. Either way, it's a problem. So we don't necessarily know. Let's just look past that and look at the repercussions of it. It says a service building at a power and water desalination plant in Kuwait has been damaged in an Iranian attack that killed an Indian worker. Representative for Kuwait's Ministry of Electricity, Water, and Renewables Energy said emergency and technical teams responded immediately, activating contingency plans to contain the impact and secure the site, the Kuwait news agency reported. The representative added that the operations across the country's electricity and water network remain stable. The incident underscores growing concerns over the vulnerability of critical infrastructure in the Gulf, particularly desalination facilities that supply most of the region's drinking water. So we talked about this. This was very early on with the war, where we were going through what some of the worst case scenarios would be, and at the very top would be desalination destruction for the Middle East, because most of those countries, where they get their water from is desalination plants. And if you take those offline, there's no fresh water, and you're looking at 3 days before you're going to have people dropping dead in the streets because there's no water for them to drink, and you have a serious problem. And so one of the things I said to pay attention to is if there's any strikes on desalination plants. It's been relatively quiet. There's been 1 or 2 hits here or there. This is like the third or fourth one, but they're still working. So they have not gone offline, but they've been hit. And so we're still kind of on the edge of a serious problem. It says the country is heavily reliant on desalination, with about 90% of its drinking water produced from seawater, making such facilities critical to the nation's security and daily life. The wider region is among most water-stressed areas of the world. Bahrain, talk about them in just a second. Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, and Qatar rank among the 5 most water-stressed countries. The World Resources Institute Aqueduct Water Risk Atlas shows the Middle East has just 2% of the world's renewable fresh water. Analysts warn that 100% of the region's population could face acute water scarcity by 2050. Bahrain, I mentioned this a few weeks back because there's been a lot of protests and riots happening in Bahrain, because if you guys know, the leaders who run Bahrain are basically the minority of the Muslims, and it's mainly the Shias where the majority of the people are, and they're taking this opportunity to possibly overthrow the royal family in Bahrain. And it's escalating. It's getting worse over there. So there might be regime change in the Middle East, but it's going to be Bahrain. But yeah, so as you guys can see here, Middle East has the world's largest share of desalination capacity. They basically run on desalination, and if you take that out, many people die. This is something we don't want. We don't want this. So keep an eye going forward, again, if more desalination plants start getting hit. It's still running. But again, that's like the 3rd or 4th one that's been hit over there. So keep that in mind. All right. We also have this as far as helium. This is the last we got when it comes to the energy situation. But Iran war chokes off helium supplies and threat to chip makers and healthcare. Byproducts of natural gas is critical to the production of superconductors and the functioning of MRI scanners. Why is this important? Superconductors go into weapons and drones and all of that. MRI scanners, of course, is hospital, healthcare, and all that jazz as well. It's not just balloons, even though the clowns, I mean, man, the helium going offline, the circus and the party and clown industry is going to get hit hard because they're not going to be able to build their balloon animals and stuff anymore. Fears of a helium crunch are mounting after a drop in global output since the start of the Iran war, as the conflict's impact spreads beyond energy markets into other critical supply chains. The Gulf is a major exporter of helium, a byproduct of natural gas that is critical for the manufacturing of microchips, including those used to power the global AI boom, as well as for functioning of medical devices. I remember when I was a kid, I heard the term microchips, and I was confused as to what type of potato chip that was. I didn't know if it was a brand or a flavor that I've never had before. I kid you not. I don't know why I told you that little story about my childhood, but there you go. I just saw microchips and it brought back memories. A U.S. subsidiary of France's Air Liquide last week wrote to helium customers to declare force majeure on helium supply contracts, warning in correspondence seen by the Financial Times that it could be unable to fulfill orders as a result of the conflict in the Middle East. It says helium production is highly concentrated. Qatar accounts for 30 to 40% of the global output, second only to the United States, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. And helium plays a vital role in semiconductor manufacturing, where the highly thermally conductive gas is used to cool wafers as their circuits are etched. It is also critical in parts of the healthcare sector, where it is used as a coolant for the powerful electromagnets in MRI scanners. So another issue with all of that. Miss Mustard, very, very small chips. That's what I thought. I thought microchips were just little chips, like fun-sized chips. I kid you not. I don't know. It just brought back childhood memory. Sometimes that happens. Living in the good old days on that one. Not of this world. We only let Zach have the bottom of the bag chips. Yeah, those are the microchips, all right. Talk about smart dust. Anyways, Cheeto dust. You know, the stuff that Trump's paints on his face every day. Anyways, Ridiculous. Either way, again, this is one of those things, again, I'm just trying to keep you guys updated on the energy situation. It's, again, one of those things where it's not necessarily entertaining to listen to. It's not fun to listen to, but it is something that we do need to keep in mind so we're able to keep track of the situation. And so something that I've noticed surrounding this whole war situation, and I said this from the beginning, the first thing that dies in war is the truth. And what I'm seeing all around headlines and everything like that is just, you'll see one report come out and then you'll see another report come out 2 days late or 2 hours later, and they're conflicting. And some are saying that one of the worst thing is listening to state media. I can't even begin to tell you that. If there's a speaker or an official from the United States government, a speaker or an official from the Israeli government, or a speaker or official from the Iranian government coming out and saying something, do not believe it. Just don't believe it, because everything that they're putting out is just fabrication. It's just lies. And whether it's a full lie or a half lie or a quarter lie, again, they're putting out stuff that you just can't believe, because there's obvious market manipulation happening. There's obvious psychological propaganda being played. There's obvious signaling being made to other countries regarding all of this stuff, and you just can't buy into it. It's theater. This is theater. Again, when you, even just military speak, they're always talking about the theater of war. That's old school military again, the theater of war, because it is theater, and we need to make sure that we're keeping that in mind. And I see it all the time. I talk about this stuff. Again, I hope people realize I'm not just going and finding fancy dancy articles and just throwing them up there and telling you, hey, maybe this is going on. But it's one of those things where it's like I'm looking through this stuff and I'm trying to connect dots. I'm trying to do compare and contrast. I'm trying to vet reports. I'm trying to look at numbers. And I'm trying to get all this stuff so I can give it to you guys. And then I've got people coming at me saying, well, that's false because Pete Hegseth said this the other day. And it's like, okay, if your counter to what I'm presenting is what Pete Hegseth says, or what Trump says, or what Marco Rubio says, or what Netanyahu or his speaker says, or what the IRGC says, or something like that, if your only counter to what I'm presenting is what these people are saying, I can't help you, because whatever these people are saying is to get you to have that exact response that you just sent me. I reject the information that you're providing because my favorite state speaker says this. I can't help you at that point. I don't know what to tell you. Don't fall for it. This is exactly how Satan works. And he's there to manipulate you. He's there to, and that's another thing that I hope people realize is, Satan is a very evil being, but he's very cunning. He's seducing. He plays according to your weakness. He has studied the world population because he has manipulated the world population for decade upon decade upon decade upon decade upon decade, going all the way back. That's what he does. He has studied. He has manipulated and propagandized and done all of these things. Of course, it's not outside of the control of God, but it's still what he does. And so he knows how to play to people. Why does he know how to play to people? Because he has built an entire system that plays people. That's why I continue to talk about how politics is Satan's religion. If you play into it, you're playing into the very hands, the very playbook of what Satan has built up for decades. So much so, you go back and you read in the Old Testament, when God said, you don't want this, when the people pleaded for a government, you don't want it. People got it. And Satan was sitting there rubbing his hands, going, here we go. Satan was like the CEO of Dollar General, that whenever an open lot opens up. He's sitting there rubbing his hands because he can put a Dollar General there. Or he's like the Spirit Halloween shops. Whenever a mall store closes, he's rubbing his hands because he can set up shop right there. That's what Satan does, and he has built it perfectly. So this idea, and this is what blows my mind, is the people that say, I'm not deceived, and then continue to talk about the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. You know that you are deceived at that point, but you can't recognize it. So just be very careful when it comes to that. It's the same thing like with what's going on in this war, because they're using the religious aspect of it. And this is something that we got to be very aware of when it comes to this. We know the Muslims want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. We understand the Jews want the Muslims gone. We can see what's going on with that. And they utilize that religious war to blind those who base everything upon the religion to not see what is currently happening when it comes to the global reset. And so they disconnect the idea of the globalists being a part of this situation, because there's no way that Israel and Iran can be part of the globalist thing and actually playing their parts in all of this, because they hate each other. Both can be correct at the same time. They can both hate each other and both be controlled by the globalists at the same time. And guess what is happening right now? That very scenario. But many people don't want you to believe that, because they believe that only one of those cases can be right at the same time, when both can actually be happening in front of our very eyes. So again, be very careful. Be very careful in regards to this. Which leads us to this situation. I hate seeing stuff like this. I really do. Because this is another lie that we continue to get told. There's no way that the United States or Israel are bombing innocent lives. It's just not possible. I refuse to believe it, because both the state speakers of the United States and Israel tell me that they're so precise, and it's only the bad guys that kill innocent lives. Don't believe that lie either. U.S. used new ballistic missile in strike that killed teens in Iran. School and sports hall in Lamerd, Iran, featured damage consistent with precision strike missile. This is a U.S.-made ballistic missile previously untested in combat, so it's basically a test, struck a sports hall and an elementary school in southern Iran on the opening day of the U.S.-Israeli war. The school and sports hall in Lamerd, Iran, featured damage consistent with a short-range ballistic missile called a precision strike missile, or PRSM, which is designed to detonate just above its target and blast small tungsten pellets outward. Guess where most of the world's tungsten comes from? China. It says videos of two strikes verified by the New York Times were also consistent with PRSM explosions, the report said, citing military experts. At least 21 people were killed in the strikes on February 28th, according to Iran state news agency. So take that with a grain of salt, because it's coming from them. It says Iran's representative to the United Nations, Amir Saeed Irevani, said that the sports hall was being used by a girls' volleyball team when it was struck. Dropsite News reported earlier chaos at the hall where young girls were attending sports training sessions as the missile slammed into the venue. The report did not conclude whether the strike was intentional, a result of improper targeting, or a design flaw attributable to the weapon's first appearance on the battlefield. New York Times also reported that the venue is easily identifiable as a civilian structure on Google Maps and Apple Maps, which I confirmed. If you go and look it up on Google Maps, it clearly says school on it. It's not something that can be manipulated. So we got another case. This is on top of the whole situation with the other girls' school that was hit, where 160 people were killed, both young girls and adults. And now we have another situation where the United States, utilizing a first-time weapon on the battlefield, has rained down more destruction upon a school. Again, it's the IRGC, or not the IRGC, but the Iran news agency is reporting that there's people in there. I don't necessarily know for sure. But either way, they shouldn't be targeting schools. in regards to that. And again, I've talked about this before, but for all the other ones that come at me and says, well, they hide schools and stuff by their military bases and stuff like that. I've checked and I've done work. There's the United States has schools connected and in their military bases. Israel does the exact same thing. So the idea that only the bad guys have military compounds next to civilian infrastructure is verifiably false. The United States and Israel both do the same thing. Now, again, I can't confirm if the United States and Israel put stuff underneath things like hospitals. We know that like terrorist groups do that, but I don't know for sure if we do that or not. But if we have compounds connected to schools and whatnot, would not surprise me if we do the same thing. This is the evil, corrupt, lawless world that we live in. And this notion, I wish I could just take a sledgehammer to this, but this notion, this idea that these select governments are not as corrupt or evil as the other ones is ridiculous. I would venture as far to say that the United States is one of the most evil countries in the world because of what they have done to how many other countries and innocent lives around the world. And this idea that we're somehow better than everybody. Again, this is one of those things where it's like, just face the reality of the situation. Again, I am not a citizen of this world. I am a citizen of heaven. And that's what allows me to recognize what is going on in this world right now. And we need to see that. Specifically, the church and believers need to see that. It's a hard pill to swallow. It is a massive pill to swallow. I get it. But we need to see it if we are going to make sure that we are doing our jobs as watchmen properly. Again, for those who claim that their citizenship is not here but in heaven, continue to spout like, the United States is some amazing thing that's doing all the good stuff around the world. I'm not sure you understand how citizenship works. Let it go. What's that one movie, the Frozen movie, Let It Go? I don't know. I've never seen it, but I think is that it? I'm sure somebody knows what I'm talking about. Anyways, let's get off that. Let's keep going. Yeah, Country Darling, again, that's kind of one of those things where you talk about, pride and all that stuff before the fall and destruction and everything. You look at the leaders of our country, man, and again, I look at that and I go, man, there's going to be a fall here. There's definitely going to be a fall here. Full of hope, cannot stay awake any longer. Yep, you're in Ireland. Well, good night. And top of the morning to you? I don't know. Good night, Full of Hope. Catch you later. All right, Finland. To check if U.S. supplied weapons are actually reaching Ukraine, Washington must ensure weapons for Ukraine don't end up in Iran. This was triggered. We talked about this on Saturday. This was triggered because the United States was floating the idea of taking $750 million worth of weapons of NATO money designated for weapons for Ukraine and taking it so they can spend it in the Middle East. And so it triggered Finland to do a weapons audit check, which is pretty interesting. It says Finland will verify whether weapons purchased by NATO countries for the Ukrainian army are actually reaching Ukraine. Defense Minister Antti Hakkinen, there's no way I'm pronouncing that right because it's got the little dot things above it, but best I got, said in an interview with Euronews, Hakkinen wrote that Finland will check whether Washington is complying with contracts signed with the European NATO countries that bought weapons for Ukraine from U.S. military contractors. The issue arose after the Washington Post reported that the Pentagon is considering redirecting critical military equipment originally intended for the Ukrainian armed forces to the war in Iran. This might be another avenue for them to continue to weaken NATO and the European Union. Again, I'm really keeping an eye on what's happening with those groups because I really do believe that is what they're attempting to do right now, is to weaken and dismantle and destroy Europe. And again, I still think that falls in line biblically when we look at the 69 weeks and then the coming 70th week, how everything is all structured and spoken of when it comes to old biblical Old Testament times and locations. I still believe that it's going to be the eastern leg that the revived Roman Empire comes, and for that to happen, they need to destroy the western side of things. And so if that is true, if that is correct, which that's the trend I see, which can change at any moment, but if that's true, then this could be another opportunity for them to be destroying NATO right in front of our very eyes, especially since we know one of the key members that sits in NATO is Turkey. And Turkey is currently sitting right now in the Middle East with all of the chaos happening right there, just licking its lips and just, you got Erdogan sitting there that, he's a very happy man because his power is growing by the day because of what's happening over there, which we also know is very important when it comes to the coming prophecy of Ezekiel 38 with the leader, with all of that going to be Turkey coming and getting hooked into invading Israel. So all of these moving parts, even something as simple as Finland doing a weapons audit check for NATO contracts, is all connected to all of those things that I just talked about. And that's not necessarily how most people think. It's how I think. Maybe I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy, but I still think I have a good idea of what's happening here, but whatever. It says earlier, the Washington Post cited sources reporting that the Pentagon officials were considering sending weapons intended for Ukraine to the Middle East. Commenting on this information, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, which, by the way, he is best friends with Trump, stressed. So the NATO secretary being best friends with Trump, who Trump wants to dismantle NATO, is a pretty good indicator of things. Well, Mark Rutte said that the delivery of American weapons to Ukraine purchased by alliance countries from the U.S. under the Pearl program continues. Yeah, but U.S. Senator Marco Rubio said that the U.S. could redirect weapons originally intended for Ukraine to conduct operations in the Middle East. Now, it's not just that's causing some issues and stability issues when it comes to NATO and all of this. But we also have this, where the U.S. circumvents Swiss payment freeze for Patriot air defense system. So hang with me. It says Switzerland halted payments for U.S. Patriot surface-to-air defense systems last autumn after learning deliveries would be delayed by several years. But the Swiss public broadcaster, the SRF, reveals that the freeze is having little effect, that the U.S. has been redirecting Swiss payments intended for the F-35 fighter jet to cover Patriot costs. Okay, what does that mean? I don't want to lose anybody here, but basically what's going on is Switzerland has two weapon contracts out to the United States. One is they pay the United States for Patriot air defense missiles, and then the other contract is they pay the United States for F-35 jets. And so what's going on is they're paying for both of those contracts, and then the United States sends the weapons to them. The situation happening is the United States says that the delivery of Patriot missiles is going to be years away. So the Swiss said, okay, we're not going to pay for those right now until you're ready to ship us those weapons. What the United States is doing is they're taking the payment money that Swiss is paying for the jets and putting it towards the Patriot missile situation, and then saying the Swiss needs to pay for the jets if they want to get them. So they're holding them hostage, taking the money, redirecting it where they're not supposed to, and then not delivering any weapons to Switzerland because of it. Does that make us look good? Is that a good deal? Or is that undermining a working relationship with another NATO member that's only splintering the relationship even further, causing more problems between the United States and NATO? Little moves like this, like, you're not going to see that in front page Western media. I had to go to a Swiss website in order to see that, to find that. But it's those little moves like that that start stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking, and you start splintering. and you start creating more problems and deals start going south. And now you're holding money hostage and you're not sending the weapons based upon the contract that you're supposed to because you're demanding more money from them. And so now nobody wants to work together. It's those little moves like that that are so significant because as they stack up, then again, we start trending towards the possible conclusion of NATO getting dismantled, European falling apart, European countries collapsing, and boom, now you've got the opportunity for a revived Roman Empire to come in. So, again, I'm just trying to give you guys some ideas on maybe looking at things from a different angle. That's all. Ms. Mustard. Again, can we burn our flag asking for a friend? Yes, that is actually a First Amendment right. You have every right to burn the American flag. Even though Trump put an executive order out there that says you'll get up to 1 year in prison if they catch you burning the American flag, it's been confirmed twice by the Supreme Court that is a form of First Amendment, is burning the American flag. So, just for legitimacy's sake, we'll put that out there. Perhaps soon, and some say that the USA is not Mystery Babylon because it's not. First of all, there's no such thing as Mystery Babylon. It's called Babylon the Great. And second of all, it's not the United States. So, yeah, good stuff. All right, let's take a look at this. More confirmation that the Iranian protests in Iran that kicked off this whole situation were not organic. And this is an angle that we were looking at. I saw a few things here and there that made me think in this direction. And now we're getting a little bit more confirmation that is probably the fact. It says Israel's Mossad promised it could ignite regime change in Iran. Mossad promises helped Netanyahu convince Trump Islamic Republic could be toppled. And so this was the 23rd of March of this year. It says Israel's intelligence agency Mossad had a plan to ignite public protests that would lead to the collapse of Iran's government. I'll read that again. Israel's intelligence agency Mossad had a plan to ignite public protests that would lead to the collapse of Iran's government. David Barnea, Mossad chief, met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu days before the U.S. and Israel began their war on Iran and told him that the agency would be able to galvanize Iranian opposition in order to bring about regime change, which has not happened, even though the United States State Department continues to tell us that that's exactly what's going on and that we've won the war. I think we've won the war 13 times now in the past couple of weeks, according to Trump, but that has not happened. Says Barnea, according to the report, also cites interviews with U.S. and Israeli officials, also presented this proposal to senior U.S. officials during a visit to Washington in mid-January. In the plan's conception, the war would begin with the killing of Iranian leaders, followed by a series of intelligence operations intended to encourage regime change. This could, Mossad believed, lead to a mass uprising that would bring about victory for Israel and the United States. But talk of regime change quickly evaporated. Less than 2 weeks in, the United States senators came out of a briefing of the war to say that overthrowing the Islamic Republic was not one of its goals, and that, in fact, there was no plan at all for the military operation. And so we must remember, biblically, in regards to this, because even though we continue to get told that Iran's going to be no more and they're going to be desecrated and they're going to get smacked down and they're going to be turned to dust and all these things like that, we understand, according to scripture, that Israel and Iran play major parts in prophecy in the future. During the day of the Lord, they play major parts. And so both Israel and Iran cannot be eliminated. This is one of those things where I continue to I use this specifically to counter any news coming out regarding they're getting ready to drop a nuke on one of the countries. Iran actually has a nuke and they're going to bomb Israel, or Israel's getting ready to drop a nuke on Iran. And I'm sitting there going, no, don't fall into that. That is pure lie because it's clickbait. Both are major players in the future. Both need to be there. Iran can't be completely decimated because they're going to need to play a significant part in the future. Israel, of course, the entire 70th week is about them, so we know that they're going to be there. So this idea that they're going to be wiped off the map or they're going to get nuked or anything like that doesn't fit biblically. Don't fall into it. However, when we look at the idea of Israel being a part of the uprising of protests, where in the Western media, we continue to get all of this news coming at us saying hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of Iranians are getting slaughtered in the street, which we understand that there was many deaths happening there. But what they were trying to do is they were trying to set up the next stage of the Iran war so you would be okay with it. See how this works? This is standard propaganda psyop 101 that has been done forever. And so we need to make sure that we're aware of that. Plus, it doesn't necessarily mean Iran needs to win. There's not going to be any winners from this war. Everything is just going to get settled. That's all it's going to be. There's not going to be any winners. But that's where we go back to this. This was one of the first things that we saw, one of the first indicators, and I just wanted to bring this forward again in case you forgot it. Israel's Mossad tells Iranian protesters, "We are with you." This was back at the 31st of December, 2025. This was during the heightened, before the war, but at the heightened protest situation. Mossad said, "We're with you on the ground." They're pushing it. They're instigating it. Again, riots and everything like that aren't just something that are funded and created here in the United States. You look at something like BLM or you look at something like January 6th, we understand that those were not organic either. But this stuff happens in other countries. And so Israel's Mossad spy agency issued a direct call urging Iranians to press on with their protests, saying it was supporting them on the ground as demonstrations spread in the capital, Tehran, and other Iranian cities. It says, "Go out into the streets together. The time has come. We are with you," Mossad wrote in a post in Farsi language. Israel's army radio reported on Wednesday. "Not just from a distance or through the words, we are also with you on the ground." Protests that began on Sunday with Tehran shopkeepers rallying against Iran's worsening economy have spread to other cities, drawing in the students as well. So again, this was before the war, during the heightened protest situation, and we understand that this was the main indicator because this is what Trump kept throwing out there. He says, we're getting ready to go to Iran because of the protesters. They're slaughtering, they're killing, they're doing all this stuff. We need to go and protect them. We need to go and protect them. Get ready to take over. And that's what was building up during all those weeks until the war began. And so that tells us none of this is organic. None of this is organic. It's the same stuff that we looked at that happened the Gulf of Tonga incident. It's the same thing that we look at the Reichstag fire. It's the same thing that we look at October 7th. Same thing with 9/11. Same thing with this situation. These are not organic events that lead to repercussion. This is completely scripted. All of those events are scripted for one reason or another. And when we realize that we are living in a theatrical world, when we realize that reality is so disconnected from what reality actually is and everything is staged, which again, some people look at that and go, you're crazy if you think that's true. I sit there and I return back to you, I think you're crazy if you don't. Because the evidence, not what our favorite people tell us, but the evidence of each individual event, if you take it down to the studs, tells us that these are orchestrated events. And then if you look at the repercussions, the outcomes of these things, then you will see that, wow, they really were. And so the more we look at this war, the more we look at where it started. Now we don't know the outcome of it yet, but what we look at how it started and where we're at now really is pointing to the fact that it's not organic. And again, I know there's a ton of people that will look at me like I'm crazy, tinfoil hat person or whatever. I'm sorry, I just can't deny what's going on with these events, man. I just can't. I just can't. I don't even know what that means, Edward. All right. If you don't think it's not scripted enough, let's look at this. Pete Hegseth's broker looked to buy defense fund before Iran attack. Morgan Stanley wealth manager approached BlackRock about multi-million-dollar investment for U.S. Defense Secretary. Again, this dude is an actor. He's a talking face. He's there for PR and publicity, and he's there for you to be mad at. He doesn't control the Pentagon. The person who's really running the Pentagon based upon their marching orders is Steve Feinberg. Steve Feinberg is the deputy secretary. He's the one connected to Cerberus, and he's connected to a whole host of other things. I need to talk about him a little bit more in the future, but we'll get to it when I can. But he's just there for the face, but he's going to profit off of the whole thing. This is a broker for Pete Hegseth. The U.S. Defense Secretary attempted to make a big investment in major defense companies in the weeks leading up to the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran. Hegseth's broker at Morgan Stanley contacted BlackRock in February about making a multi-million-dollar investment in the asset manager's Defense Industrial Active ETF, and shortly before the U.S. launched military action against Tehran. So he knew it was coming, and so he went to his broker and said, invest in these military contractors because I know a war is coming and I want to make money. It's the same thing that the government does. It's the insider trading. It's how these people make so much money. You look at the people in Congress that come in and they're bartenders, and all of a sudden they come out and they're $100 million bank accounts. You look at these people like the Trump family, whose his wealth has grown like double during this term of presidency because he has used the government for his own personal gain. You look at the friends like the Witkoff family and the Kushner family, and you look at all these people, and they're all making boatloads of money because they have insider trading. And you're going to sit there and tell me that this isn't corruption, this isn't lawlessness, and we need to trust these people because they're here for you? Get out of here, man. Get out of Dodge. It says the inquiry on behalf of the high-profile potential client was flagged internally at BlackRock. Its largest holdings include defense conglomerates RTX, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, which counts the U.S. Department of Defense as their biggest customers, as well as data integration specialist Palantir. Hegseth is among the chief architects of the war in Iran and also served as the Trump administration's most vocal advocates for the attack on the Islamic Republic, often flaunting the U.S.'s military might. The investment discussed by Hegseth's broker did not ultimately go ahead, as the fund, which launched in May last year, was not yet available for Morgan Stanley clients to buy. Although ETFs are designed to be bought and sold as easily as stock, their proliferation has meant that most big brokerage and trading platforms only carry a subset of over 14,000 ETFs in existence. So, while that deal didn't go through, it's not known whether Hegseth's broker subsequently found an alternative defense-focused fund to make the investment. So he may have went to a different place to invest in it, but we don't know. It says ETFs are popular with individual investors because they tend to offer lower fees and more favorable tax treatment than mutual funds, that as well as being able to buy and sell in and out of them more quickly. So he may have found a place to invest, but we don't know. It says the discussions about the defense investment comes as a time when Wall Street analysts have been scrutinizing trades made in financial and prediction markets ahead of decisions the Trump administration takes. Again, people are losing fortunes by trading in the stocks and commodity markets and prediction markets and stuff like that because they trade based upon trends. And when you have Trump coming out and with one social media post, he can change the trajectory of any market he wants to on a dime, make a fortune, and all those people that put in when they did based on something else all lost their money. So the Trump family and the Trump administration and friends of those are all making bank while they continue to steal more of your money that you invest in there. But go ahead, please tell me how he's one of the good guys. Or bring up Hunter's Coke problem again. Thank you, Rumba. Anyway. Edward Lisp talking about the conspiracy theories. The conspiracy theories. Anyways. So let's talk about this one, shall we? This is a trend that I've been keeping an eye on. I need to read the chat. I just read the conspiracy theory thing. Oh. Exactly. Yeah. This is Mike Tyson for Encyclopedia Britannica. Anyways. Ladybug, Uncle Sam needs you. Yeah, definitely needs you. So this is a trend that I've been watching for a while. I haven't necessarily brought it up. There's been a lot of misleading information out there, but there's been some truthful information as well. So it's trying to figure out what's going on with this. But this one's pretty obvious because there's been some videos of this. And it says, Pete Hegseth just revealed the real roots of his sadism and rage. Does God want America to kill as many of our enemies as we can in as violent a fashion as possible? We have a defense secretary who apparently thinks so. I don't know if you guys have been seeing this, but it's pretty telling. It says, when Pete Hegseth talks to God, he asks the Almighty to help him kill people as violently and ruthlessly as possible. Again, you can find videos of him talking to the prayer meetings and stuff, government prayer meetings, and this is what he's praying for. It says Hegseth has ordered monthly prayer meetings at the Pentagon, and in his first such gathering since launching the war against Iran, the defense secretary pleaded for divine assistance in mowing down the Iranian foe. It says, let every round find its mark against the enemies of the righteous and our nation, Hegseth intoned to a military audience, reciting a prayer previously given by a military chaplain before the Venezuela raid and applying it to the American troops in Iran. Give them wisdom in every decision, Hegseth continued, endurance for the trial ahead, unbreakable unity, and overwhelming violence of action against those who deserve no mercy. You will find that Pete Hegseth speaks and prays to God publicly in cases like this where he's saying he wants God to intervene divinely to display ruthless violence and unmercy against anyone who stands in the way of what the United States is trying to do. Now, I don't know about you guys. When you go through biblical history, you know that there are times where people are praying for God to get involved with a military situation, and God does do so. But that is based upon who's involved and the scenario and what is unfolding according to God's will and God's prophecy. We understand that we need to separate that when there are times that does happen. That's not the case for what Pete Hegseth is doing. He is utilizing God as a symbol for divine assurance that the United States will ruthlessly, violently, aggressively, and unmercifully kill anybody who gets in the way of what they are trying to accomplish. It has nothing to do with God's will, has nothing to do with protecting God's people. It has nothing to do with anything like we read in biblical accounts. And he wants to use God, and he's using God's name as a scapegoat for just the evil violence that they're putting forth into the world today. And so this is one of the things, and we're not going to get into a long discussion. We don't have time to do so. But this is one of the things that I was warning about when it came to the Christian nationalist movement. We haven't talked about that in a while, but this is what I was talking about, because when you have all of these people connected to Christian nationalism, and there's still some pastors and stuff like that still think that that's a good thing, which is just mind-boggling. But this is what happens because they use God for evil things. They use the name of God for evil things. When they're talking about God and they're talking about Jesus Christ, now they're standing for this and doing that. It's not the real God. It's not the true Jesus. It's none of them. It's their own version, a false version. Many will come in my name. See that you're not deceived. This is what's going on. This is an indicator of the times that we were told that was going to happen in these last days. His God is not the true God. He's calling upon a false God, a mystery God, in order to bring down and smite with ruthless aggression against all who stand in the way of their satanic plan. That's what's going on with this. And we have pastors and Christians that can't seem to disconnect the two. Again, it's the same thing when it comes to rightly divining the Babylon of Revelation 17 and the Babylon of Revelation 18. They are unified at the hip, but they are two separate entities. It's not the United States. It's not the Catholic Church. It's none of those things. We need to go to the root of the situation, the root of the problem. We go all the way back to Babylon, where it was the unholy pagan trinity of what was going on. It was the birth of the mystery religion, and it was the birth of the first one world Antichrist beast system. Two separate, but joined together. It's the same thing of what's going on right now. So when we look at the mystery religion of the old ancient Babylon, it's a form that we see when it comes to the Christian nationalism being on display by the leaders of the United States right now. This is so important that we can differentiate between the God that Pete Hegseth is putting forth publicly in the name of the Trump administration and the true God of the Bible. See, Hegseth's clever, or somebody behind him is clever enough to feed him verses of scripture, specifically reading passages of David and whatnot, not realizing, most Christians probably aren't realizing that he's taking those out of context and putting them in place as a representative of a false God, as opposed to what David truly was speaking to the true God. We need to recognize that. Goes on to say the appointed leader of the world's most powerful military regularly speaks about his capacity to rain terror and death on the enemies with an undisguised relish that should unsettle us all. If you guys have ever listened to how he talks about it, he smiles when he talks about blowing innocent lives up and whatnot. He loves killing. He has a bloodlust. It says, by now it's become unmistakable that Hegseth's tenure has been marked by open and unrestrained sadism and bloodlust. He enthuses about raining death and destruction down from the sky all day long and about punching the enemy while they're down. These are all quotes of his, all while he speaks of God allowing him to do these things. He speaks of liberating the military from stupid rules of engagement. He delights in unleashing its maximum lethality. He rhapsodizes about killing without hesitation, with no moral qualms whatsoever, and then immediately prays to God to bring divine power to do so. There's judgment. There's judgment currently happening on this country, but I'm almost certain that there's a coming judgment that I don't know if we're going to be here for, where this country is going to fall so hard. And it's because of stuff like this. The patience that God has is beyond human comprehension. Because I can almost guarantee, I can speak for every single person watching right now, that if we were God and we saw what was going on, this country would have been smoked long ago. I can almost guarantee it. The patience that God has, the long suffering of where people doing evil satanic things under the guise of, under the guise of doing it in God's name, is just, it's remarkable. Because it's not yet time. This again confirms not only the almighty power of God, but also the fact that he's in control of these things. He is sovereign, and he is holding things back based upon his prophetic word, which again is our yet future, but it's his already done past. It's amazing. Don't fall for this, though. Don't fall for this false Christianity that's being put forth by these groups. This NAR Christian nationalism that's being promoted and utilized by this administration and in many churches that support it is not the true God, it is not the true Jesus. It is a false God. Don't follow it. And we have still so many people out there that claim to be Christians that are trying to do their best when it comes to make sure that they're pushing forth the political agenda under the guise of Christianity, that they continue to platform these leaders in Christian nationalism in the NAR. One of them was just, I posted on my Telegram, Alex Newman just had Che on his platform to talk about California politics. And it's like, why would you platform one of the leaders of the NAR and Christian nationalism movement? Why would you do that? Well, we don't agree with him, but it has to do with politics. It doesn't matter with it. You put your politics and your news ahead of what is true and correct to God. You have it backwards. Why are you platforming these people? You are deceiving your followers, deceiving your listeners, all in the name of politics. Don't fall for it. Oh, man. All right. How are we doing on time? We're almost done. Get through these things. So Tom Homan says ICE agents will stay at airports indefinitely. So he came out and announced, if you guys don't know, ICE is in airports now, 14 of them confirmed, more on the list to be added. And he came out and said that it's going to be indefinite. ICE agents will be in airports indefinitely. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents are reportedly set to remain at airports indefinitely, according to the border czar, Tom Homan. The Trump administration explains why the federal officers will continue to be stationed despite the presence of the Transportation Security Administration Office. Holman recently appeared in an interview with CNN to discuss the presence of ICE agents at 14 approved airports in the United States. During his conversation, he explained the reasoning behind the Trump administration decision. So yeah, he has confirmed that they will be there. ICE agents would be there and remain in their posts until airports could resume regular operations. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not seeing any indicators that airports are going to be going back to regular operations anytime soon. Again, this is one of those things where if you say, oh, this is temporary, it always becomes forever. And we have another situation happening here where ICE agents temporarily going to help in airports during this partial government shutdown, and now they're going to be there indefinitely. It's amazing. Speaking of ICE agents will be stationed outside Marine Corps graduation events in South Carolina. As the U.S. continues to fight the war in Iran, the Marine Corps has boosted protection measures on bases, requiring everyone to present real IDs, passports, or birth certificates to access any sites. They're going to ambush Marine families that are trying to attend graduation events to see if they can wrangle up some illegals. It says ICE agents will be stationed outside graduation events for the nation's newest Marines to identify whether any of their family members are undocumented, according to the Marine Corps. As the U.S. continues the war in Iran, the Marine Corps has boosted protection measures on bases, requiring everyone to present real IDs, U.S. passports, or U.S. birth certificates to access any sites. Undocumented immigrants are generally ineligible for federal real IDs and don't have U.S. passports or birth certificates. So people without identifying documents who arrive at the gate of the Marine Corps Recruit Depot at Parris Island in Beaufort, South Carolina, for Recruit Family Days and graduation events this week may now have to answer to immigration and custom enforcement officials, the Marine Corps said. For those who still don't think that the ICE is not a personal, political, private police force for Trump, I don't know what else I can present to make you see what is happening. How about this one? ICE officer admits rape of woman in custody in exchange for favors. Guilty plea reveals coercion involving child access as scrutiny grows over abuse in ICE detention facilities. A resurfaced case involving an ICE detention officer who admitted to raping a woman in custody in exchange for access to her child is reigniting scrutiny of scrutiny of abuse inside U.S. detention facilities as sentencing approaches. The case centers on a former contract detention officer employed at an ICE facility who pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a detained immigrant woman over several months. Prosecutors allege that the abuse was tied to coercive favors, including allowing the woman limited contact with her daughter. The detention officer at the center of the case, identified as David Corvell, 56, entered a guilty plea to a federal charge of sexual abuse of a person in custody. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, the charge carries a potential sentence of up to 15 years in prison and significant financial penalties. Yeah, I know what the actual punishment should be, but I'm not allowed to say it on YouTube. His court filings show that the abuse occurred between May and July of 2025 while the victim was detained at a South Louisiana ICE processing center. The facility is operated by private contractor, the GEO Group, which we know are best friends and have many contracts with Trump, which employed Corvell as a contract detention officer and manages a large portion of ICE detention infrastructure. Keep in mind, guys, we went over this a couple months ago. This is not a one-time event. We've gone over where there's been 37 so far ICE agents who have been caught with sexual assault charges against many people, more than half against children, underage people. So you're looking, and that's just what we've seen so far. And so this is not anything new. Not to mention, there's reports out there that some detention facilities, ICE agents they have pools going about which detainee is going to off themselves next. Or then we know that there's some ICE detention centers for immigrants who are underage, where there's a whole bunch of reports coming out that they're all getting sexually abused and raped by ICE detention officers. This is not something small. This is not just a one-time thing. This is a reoccurring situation. How about this one? Robert Morris. Yes, that Robert Morris was released from Oklahoma jail after serving his 6 months. Yes, 6 months for sexually abusing a woman at the age of 12 to the age of 14 when he was an adult. And he's going to serve his remaining 9.5-year probation sentence in Texas. Yes, this is the same Robert Morris of Gateway Church who people like Jimmy Evans knew what he did and helped cover it up, even though Jimmy Evans is still rolling around in the Prophecy Mafia crew with a ministry. And we also know Robert Morris is an ally and helped host multiple Trump campaign events at his church as well. Robert Morris, former megachurch pastor who pleaded guilty to child sex abuse, has been released from jail in Oklahoma. Morris was serving a 10-year sentence. However, all but 6 months of the prison term were suspended at sentencing. So he only had to spend 6 months in prison. He was forced to resign in disgrace in June of 2024 when Cindy Clemenshire came forward to allege that Morris had sexually abused her when she was 12 years old. After Morris departed from Gateway, the church hired a third-party investigator to conduct the inquiry into the cover-up of Morris's criminal sexual misconduct. The investigation revealed that more than one high-level leader in the church either knew that Clemenshire was a child at the time of the abuse or knew enough that they ought to have inquired further. We went through all that documentation. They knew what was going on. Now that Morris has been released from the Osage County Jail, he will serve out the remainder of his suspended sentence, which amounts to probation in Texas. According to CBS News, he plans to serve his 9.5-year probation sentence at his $1.5 million lakefront home in Palo Pinto County. Oh, poor Robert Morris. Morris will be required to register as a sex offender for life and pay for the cost of his incarceration. He also owes $270,000 in restitute to Clemenshire, which is just a drop in the bucket for good old mega pastor Robert Morris. Don't worry. God has judgment for these people. He has judgment for these people. This next one is not pretty. It's not pretty. But you need to know. January 6th rioter pardoned by Trump gets prison sentence for possessing enormous child pornography collection. This isn't pretty. A man pardoned by President Donald Trump for his actions on January 6th has been sentenced for possessing more than 100,000 child sexual abuse images and videos discovered in connection with his Capitol riot case. Daniel Tosi was sentenced to 4 years in prison by the U.S. District Judge Mark G. Mastroianni in the District of Massachusetts after he pleaded guilty to possession of child pornography, according to a Justice Department news release Monday that made no mention of the January 6th link. Tosi had been set to go to trial in the January 6th case early last year, but it was dismissed after Trump granted mass clemency to roughly 1,500 defendants tied to the attack on the Capitol. Federal prosecutors wrote in a sentencing memo in the child pornography case that in addition to the child sex abuse material, Tosi's laptop contained extremely disturbing images of violent acts, such as a cat being killed by being put in a blender, a male shooting a female in the head, and a dog being beaten to death, and severed heads and limbs, as well as images and videos of bestiality. You want to talk about living in the days of Noah and Sodom and Gomorrah? We're here. Before he pleaded guilty in September, Tosi's attorneys had argued for the dismissal of the child sex abuse material case because all the evidence stemmed from the pardoned January 6th case. I'm sorry, if you're that attorney and you're willing to know all of that and still be employed by this dude as a lawyer, I would dismiss myself. There's no possible way that I'm going to be defending you. The case against Mr. Tosi must be dismissed because the entirety of the evidence stems from a warrant that, according to President Trump, should have never been issued, Tosi's Tosi attorney wrote in July. That's not the only one. There's been multiple January 6th rioters that were pardoned by Trump who have then been caught either with child pornography or counts of rape and stuff like that. Cream of the crop individuals. Then we got this, moving on from that, White House ballroom project to include massive military complex. So this is just confirming what we already knew. We talked about this a long time ago, but we're getting confirmation now that what we saw, what we found is true. The U.S. military is upgrading White House facilities for the new East Wing. The administration said on Monday after Trump said that the ballroom would be built on top of a massive fortified complex. On Sunday, Trump showed a large rendering of a new building to reporters aboard Air Force One, touting security features including bulletproof glass and a drone-proof roof. It says now that the military is building a big complex under the ballroom, which has come out recently because of a stupid lawsuit that was filed, but the military is building a massive complex under the ballroom, and that's under construction. Of course, this is part of the Presidential Emergency Operations Center. Again, we talked about this when the whole project of the ballroom came forth. We were talking about how it had nothing to do with the ballroom. It has to do with the operations center underneath. And that's basically what's being confirmed is that's what they're working on. Not much else to talk about on that. Then we have this. Justice Department settles Flynn's wrongful prosecution suit for $1.25 million. The agreement was an extraordinary example of how the Trump administration has offered legal relief to those aligned with the president. That's right. Michael Flynn, who pleaded guilty twice, has decided to settle with the Justice Department to take $1.25 million of your tax dollars and pocket it. Just another day for those who are friends with Trump. The Justice Department has agreed to pay Michael Flynn, President Trump's former national security advisor, $1.25 million to settle claims that he was wrongfully prosecuted for making false statements to federal agents investigating ties between Russia and Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. The settlement agreement, which put to rest a lawsuit Flynn filed 3 years ago, was an extraordinary example of how the Trump administration has offered legal relief to those aligned with the president. It appeared to be a part of a broader effort to erase the effect of some prominent criminal cases brought against Mr. Trump and his allies. Mr. Flynn's suit, filed in federal district court in Tampa, accused federal prosecutors of maliciously charging him with lying to investigators who were working on the Russia inquiry, even though he had twice pleaded guilty to misleading the FBI about conversations he had with the Russian diplomat as Mr. Trump was poised to enter the White House for the first time. Yes, we live in a society where we can plead guilty twice to something and then sue the government and settle and still make $1.25 million. That's our justice system. That's supposedly not corrupt. Man, that must be nice. So that should allow me to go get a speeding ticket and say, yes, I did it, and then turn around and sue them for $500,000. I should be able to win that, right? No, I won't, because I'm not friends with Trump. That's why. Again, we've gone over this before. Mountains of reports of Trump pardoning and dropping cases against anyone that has ties to either donating to him or has business contracts with him. Just mountains of evidence. He talks about how they're going after all the fraud, but yet he has pardoned so many people that it's stacked up to like $1.2 billion that has been defrauded from American taxpayers, but they have all been pardoned because they're friends with Trump. And yet we're at the point now where, we continue to get told by Christians who support Trump that we're against the fraud. No, he's not. He's only against the fraud that isn't paying him. And so we have a case here where Flynn, yes, Theosophy New Age Flynn here, who helped instigate and organize the January 6th riots, who helped connect Palantir to the U.S. military, who has ties to the Russian government, who pleaded twice guilty to misleading the FBI during their investigations, has went and sued the U.S. government, and the government says, okay, we'll settle. We'll take $1.25 million of taxpayer money from the Treasury and hand it to our friend, Mr. Flynn. Corruption, lawlessness, and it's here. In 2020, after the unusual pressure campaign by Trump and several of his allies, the Justice Department dropped the case against Mr. Flynn, chiseling away at the results of the Russia investigation, which we know for a fact from history and evidence that Trump is indeed a Russian asset, and his ties go all the way back to the 80s. Now, what's funny about this is Flynn claims he has no affiliation with the Russians, whatsoever. But it's so fascinating that once this report came out, Kirill Dmitriev, who is one of the highest people connected to the Kremlin and Putin, congratulated the Flynn family on their win publicly. Now, I don't know if this is just a shot, just like a ribbing, just like an ironic comment, or if it's, legitimate cover or not. But he says, congratulations to the Flynn family on the Department of Justice vindication. The Russiagate hoax has been exposed once more, and those responsible should face the consequences. The deep state is strong in constant disinformation, but weak on truth. Truth will prevail. Remember, he's one of the people connected to the Kremlin and the Russian government and Putin. He does many speaking engagements for them. And he comes out and congratulates the Flynn family. Ironic, isn't it? I think it's ironic. Oh, my goodness. Anyways, last but not least, let's take a look at this one. finishing it off. Yeah, in like Flynn, for sure. In with Flynn. So this is one of those things that a lot of people don't necessarily know. And I think this is a good opportunity to not only make sure everybody's aware of law enforcement and police and what their requirements are, especially right now when things could shift to very bad times, with ICE out there and police out there and National Guard out there and everything like that. Just this is a good reminder of you're on your own. And so I saw this come through, and so I wanted to bring this forth. It says the NYPD is not required to protect New Yorkers, city lawyers argue in court filing. So it says the NYPD is not constitutionally required to help a person being attacked by an angry mob, lawyers for the city argued in recent court filing. The argument came in response to a claim filed by Amanda Lucy, who alleged New York PD officers failed to protect her from a mob of young men and boys who she said attacked her in Crown Heights, Brooklyn in 2025. So there's a misconception regarding police and what they're required to do. There's this idea that police are there to help defend you when things are happening. There is zero requirement for law enforcement to step in and defend you or protect you from another citizen. They're not required to do that. Even though there's a lot of people that think that's true. That's why many police stations started removing the protect and serve and started changing that whole language. There's some that still do it, but a lot of them have removed that because it's false advertising. They're not required to do that. They're there to protect themselves, honestly. And I know there's people who watch me that are either law enforcement or have friends or family that are law enforcement, and a lot of them kind of get on edge whenever I talk about something like this, but I'm just telling you the truth. You're on your own. These policemen they're not obligated to protect you. There's no requirement. Look at what happened during the mass shooter events. None of those cops wanted to get involved with it because they're not required to. And so we need to keep that in mind going forward, especially in a time where things are going to continue to get worse and people are going to continue to get more selfish. And we know that police, city police and stuff like that, they're not elected officials. They are organized groups run by the government. And so that's very important that we remember that. So going on further with this, it says, in her lawsuit, Lucy said that she was surrounded, kicked, and threatened by a large group of people, most of whom were wearing traditional Orthodox Jewish garb after they mistook her for a pro-Palestinian protester in front of a historic synagogue. Her lawsuit claims that the New York PD officers who responded to the scene emboldened the mob by not doing anything to quell the situation, in part because they believed Lucy was expressing pro-Palestinian views. Now, I don't know anything about this situation, so I don't know the details of what was going on. There's some stuff that doesn't make any sense because part of her argument is she lived nearby, heard commotion, came down to see what was going on, but yet there's a picture of her with a mask on her face. So if you were just coming down to see what was going on, why are you, putting something over your face? I don't know the situation. I don't know what's going on, so I'm not even going to talk about all of that. I just want to talk about this particular thing when it comes to the police. It says attorneys for the city wrote last week that they will ask a judge to dismiss the lawsuit for a number of legal reasons. Among their arguments is one that the New York Police Department has no constitutional requirement to protect somebody from being attacked. It's an argument that may surprise most people, but the attorneys cited a number of prior cases they say back up their defense and show judges may agree with their view. Legal experts who spoke to the Gothamist agreed that the Constitution generally does not require officers to protect people, but they said that there are exceptions and they may apply to Lucy's case. Again, I don't know the whole situation, so I'm not even going to comment on that. It says attorneys for the city said that the legal papers that the police can't violate someone's constitutional rights by failing to protect them. It says plaintiff does nothing more than state that she was attacked by protesters and that the officers did not stop them. Their paper said, adding that's not grounds to sue and that the lawsuit should be dismissed. Attorneys for the city used an example of a lawsuit brought by a man, hear this one out, The attorneys for the city used an example of a lawsuit brought by a man who had helped police in a sting against a suspected Queens drug dealer. When the dealer later slashed the man in the face with a box cutter, the city argued that the police had no obligation to protect him. So this guy was helping the police catch a drug dealer, got attacked. The police did not help him, sued the police because, people thought that that's their job. And they basically said, no, we're not required to help you, even if you're helping us. An appeals court sided with the city in that case, finding that even though the man was attacked after participating in the sting, the police were not responsible for putting him in danger. Keep in mind, this is a stipulation that's countrywide, not just New York. It says, in general, the Constitution doesn't require public employees to protect people, and that includes the police, several legal experts said. Most of what the Constitution does is create rights to be free of a certain conduct by the state, he said. In general, we don't have a right to be protected by the state from assault by private individuals. And this is where that famous line of, I'd rather have freedom over peace and security comes from. It's not the exact quote, but it's the famous Ben Franklin quote. Because the government's not here to protect you. That's not their job. But yet, we're told, and we've been propagandized and brainwashed to believe that that's what the police is there for. It's not. That's why it's always one of those things where you need to learn to protect yourself. You need to understand that you're on your own. If you want freedom, you're on your own. That's how it works. Now we're twisting into this weird dystopian situation where they're still not going to protect you, but yet they're going to take away all your freedom. And that's just what we're at now. But still, that's one of those things. So this is an indicator. Remember, you're on your own. Figure out a way to protect yourself. Something sharp or something that you pull the trigger. Get something. It says, but Reinert and other legal scholars said that there's no exceptions to that. There are some exceptions to that, and how the police acted during the group's attack on Lucy may be one. Leah Littman, a law professor at the University of Michigan, said persuading a judge that police failed to protect Lucy because they thought she was a pro-Palestinian protester could be the key. He said if there is evidence to show that the New York Police Department's actions created a situation that increased the risk to Lucy, it could be a good argument for the lawsuit to move forward. Basically based upon religious affiliation or political affiliation, things like that. So this is just another situation when, again, I want to bring this forward, just a reminder so everybody is aware. It's not their responsibility to protect you. We need to keep that in mind. I also wanted to bring this forward too, just as something that I thought was interesting because I came across this during the whole situation. Court okays barring high IQ for cops. This was from September 8th of 2000. It says a man whose bid to become a police officer was rejected after he scored too high on an intelligence test has lost an appeal in the federal lawsuit against the city. The Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New York upheld a lower court's decision that the city did not discriminate against Robert Jordan because the same standards were applied to everybody who took the test. If you're too smart, they will not allow you to be a cop. And the city says, okay. Jordan, a 49-year-old college graduate, took an exam in 1996 and scored 33 points, the equivalent of an IQ of 125, but the New London police interviewed only candidates who scored 20 to 27 on the theory that those who scored too high could get bored with police work and leave soon after undergoing costly training. The average score nationally for police officers is 21 to 22, the equivalent of an IQ of 104, which is just a little above average. I thought that was interesting. I just came across that and thought I would tie it to the whole situation that the cops are not required to help you. Yeah, Ren, they want dumb cops. I do believe that that's the direction that they're going, is they don't want people who can think logically for themselves. They just want a bunch of yes men to go out there and do what they're doing. But we're not going to get into that conversation. We don't have time, and that's one that really seems to make a lot of people mad. So we'll just go ahead and move on that. Charlotte, I kind of already addressed that. The motto, to protect and serve. Most police districts and whatnot, departments have moved away from that saying. They've changed it because it's basically false advertising. There's some that still have it on their cars and stuff, but a lot of it has been changed. To protect and serve, to protect themselves and serve their masters. That's how I put it. That's what that means. They're going to protect themselves and they're going to serve those above them. But again, we're going to go ahead and move on. Charlotte, oh no, don't worry. Just responding to that. Anyways, with all that going on, I can already see a bunch of people left. Yeah, they don't. Whenever I bring up police, it usually offends a lot of people, but I'm just being honest, reporting what's going on out there. With all that going on, though, just again, we covered a lot of stuff. Whether it's the energy situation, whether it's the utilization of God's name to put forth satanic agenda that's actually being done under a false Christ, whether it's things when it comes to what's happening with the days of Noah, Sodom and Gomorrah, disgusting behavior, sinful behavior of people, the corruption and lawlessness, just everything like that. Just with all that going on, again, we need to make sure, for those who have Christ, continue to remind yourself, wake up in the morning every day and remind yourself that even though this world is continuously getting more and more dark, is continuously swirling towards dystopian agenda, and we continue to see Satan's demonic army continue to take more and more territory in this world, remind yourself that the Lord said that these times were coming. And when these times are coming, when these times continue to get worse and worse and worse, we need to continue to be more and more encouraged, because none of this is throwing God off course. He's not sitting there panicking going, oh, I did not account for this. No, because this stuff has already happened for him. He's what has been written down in his word is stuff that has already happened. We're just on a timeline waiting for it to actually take place for us. So he's not caught off guard. And so he's told us these things, so we're not caught off guard, and we can continue to encourage and edify each other with this information. So we have a fire in our bellies to go out there and warn people, use this as witnessing tools, and share the gospel with as many as we can before the smackdown begins. Before we're taken up and the hammer comes down. Remind yourself each and every day. Don't allow Satan to use this to keep you depressed. Or what's the term? I've seen it a couple times. I can't remember what it's. Evil fatigue. I think it's something like that. Don't let that stuff sink in. Move forward. Remind yourself, this stuff is getting harder. It's getting heavy. But if the world is getting heavy, remind yourself that you should be getting lighter, because we're going up. For somebody who doesn't know the Lord and you don't have that hope, that encouragement, the only way that you can find it is in Jesus Christ and his salvation, which is found through his gospel, which is as simple as ABC. A is you admit that you're a sinner, the act of repentance, metanoia, changing mind, turning from self to Christ. It's through repentance that allows true belief, because how can you believe in Jesus Christ as your Savior if you don't know why you need him? It's through that repentance that allows true belief in Jesus Christ. You believe that Jesus Christ is the one and only begotten Son of God, that he came down 100% man, 100% God, the God-man, the one and only, and he lived the perfect, sinless life. The only one to do so, which means he is the only one qualified to carry the sins of the world upon his shoulders to the cross, where he took our place. He took my place upon that cross. Remember, tomorrow, Passover. Tomorrow marks the crucifixion of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We need to keep that front and center as we go about our days, that he did that for us. Remember that. Hold on to that tomorrow. Keep that front and center in your mind, because that is the first step of our salvation. Second step, of course, is because of the power of the blood that he spilled, he defeated death and rose again on the third day, for all who believe in him shall not perish but live forever, because of his glory, because of his sacrifice. And for all who place their faith in him shall live forever, because of his gift. And see, as we call upon the Lord, when we receive salvation, we are given an incredible supernatural gift of prayer, where we get to go to our Heavenly Father every day, at any moment, and speak to him. And we say, God, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to live in these times. As dark as they are, we understand that you are more active than ever. God, thank you for allowing us to see what is going on, to witness what's going on, and to be ambassadors in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. God, we thank you for sending your Son, Jesus, to live the perfect life, the spotless Lamb, where he gave his life, defeated death, so that we may live. Thank you, Lord, for your sacrifice, your willing sacrifice, and for saving us who deserve death. Thank you. Give us the strength, the endurance, and the boldness to speak your name and your gospel in this world of darkness. In your holy name we pray. Please come soon, Maranatha. Amen. Amen. All right. Everybody good? Everybody still here? All right. We got a couple questions. Let's take a look at what's going on here. Country Darling question. Do you think that the war in Iran is partly to merge it and any surrounding countries? If it is, I'm not seeing anything indicating that. I don't necessarily see that happening. There might be some maybe some political ties being connected, but I'm not necessarily seeing that. I think a lot of it has to do with restructuring supply lines, restructuring trade, giving power to certain countries over there. Like I said, Turkey is amassing a ton of power right now, which is important for future prophecy, because Turkey is going to lead that Ezekiel 38 situation. So I don't necessarily see countries come together. We're seeing the Greater Israel Project moving forward, with Israel grabbing land in Lebanon like they did with Gaza. So there's some of that happening. But as far as the other countries, I'm not necessarily seeing that. Maybe in the future. It's still not over yet. Edwin McKelvey, why are we going back to the moon, in quotations, on April Fool's Day? Yeah, a little bit of an eyebrow raise on that one, isn't it? Going back to the moon since the first time we did, but it's on April Fool's Day? Yeah, pretty interesting. Not sure I'm buying that one. I know I'm not buying that one, honestly, because I still don't believe that we can get past lower Earth's atmosphere. So, lower Earth orbit. Kev P. Hey, Kev, I haven't seen you in a while, man. You've been hiding. Do you think that 4-day work weeks are coming? Well, there's some countries that have already implemented those. Couple Asian countries. I think India did or is preparing to. There's a couple other countries I know that have implemented it. Possibly. I would think in the United States, I don't think they would drop another work day. I think it would just be work from home. Maybe in like Canada, they might do 4-day work weeks and whatnot. So, yeah, it's possible. It just depends on where you're at, honestly, in some countries. The Hylers, or the Hylers, yeah. Have you heard anything in the news regarding China and their Belt Road initiative through Iran? I think that's more connected to like the IMEC thing. I'm more paying attention to the Iraqi Silk Road, or the development road that goes from Iraq into Turkey up to Europe. That's the one that I'm more paying attention to. I know most people are paying attention to IMEC because that involves China and all that stuff, which I don't think that's gonna go away. I don't. But I think this is a shift for the Iraqi Silk Road and possibly the Ben Gurion Canal. Pay attention to that, because that will go through Gaza to the Red Sea, and I think that could play a part in the future regarding the new trade system that I think we're beginning to see develop in the Old Testament region of things. That's another reason why I think everything, when it comes to the 70th week, is going to shift back to where they were during the first 69 weeks. It's going to go Old Testament again. And I think all the emphasis, all the trade is going to go back there, which is, again, why Babylon is so important, especially since Babylon was declared, I can't think of the word, trade group, manufacturing capital of Iraq. So I think that's where things are shifting on that one. Let's see here. I lost. Oh, there I am. Okay. How was the AWACS plane hit? It couldn't have been in the air with that kind of damage. I don't know what you're talking about, Edward, on that one. So I'm not sure. So I can't really answer any questions on that one. Yeah, if you put in the chat, like, I don't know. Let me know if you have a little bit more detail. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Lori S., did Israel pull out of the Iran war? Not technically. Again, I think what was going on is part of this war had to do with the United States getting involved to take on Iran, which is allowing Israel to go and take land in Lebanon. And I saw that trend happen about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, where it seemed like that's what the transition was. This whole thing was started so the United States could be the shield against Iran, freeing up Israel to go in and take parts of Lebanon. I think that's what we're seeing right now. So while they're not pulled out, their focus is more on Lebanon than Iran. Let's see. Oh, Edward, it was on Fox. I'm not sure. I'd have to go and look, man. I don't know about that. Let's see here. The Hylers question: a while back, you said that we might bounce back from this war. And how do you feel about it now? Has your opinion changed? Well, I think what you're referencing to is when I said, don't fall into the idea of declaring that this is the end of the end type of thing, which I still stand by, because while it took a long time, we came out of the Kuf situation, and there's been wars and stuff like that where all of a sudden we've come out. Now, that doesn't mean everything is going to go back to right as rain immediately, but it's still one of those things where they could accomplish what they want to without actually shifting into a full, global meltdown. And that's kind of what I was referencing, is this, just because of what's happening right now doesn't mean that this is going to be the ignition for the entire global meltdown. It could be, or it could not be. We just don't know. So my indication, or what I was trying to say, was don't be so definitive about a yes or no on it. Let's just keep track of what's going on and move forward through this. So hopefully that makes sense. Ladybug, I think this is the last one. Yeah, this is the last one. Jellyfish, we lost a few listeners. We always lose a whole bunch of listeners when I start the gospel stuff. I wish maybe in the future they'll stick around and hear it, but a lot of them bail out as soon as I do that. Ladybug, Zach, are you aware of J.R. Sweet, who was used by Satanists with ritual abuse and mind control as a child? What he experienced is horrific. I know the name. I know I've looked into his stuff in the past. I can't recall anything right now on it. I know that name though. I know I've looked into his stuff. It's just so hard nowadays because of the amount of stuff that we go over. I forget so many things because I'm intaking so many other things. And so there's a lot of stuff like J.R. Sweet and his story. And there's a whole bunch of other people. Obviously, I can't recall off the top of my head because I've forgotten them that we've talked about or we've looked at or things like that I've forgotten because there's so much stuff coming in. My filing cabinets, my hard drive is full up in my head. So it's kind of hard. Anyways, DDX or DDDX, please let us know how to present a question. I thought I presented one. Put question in all caps and then followed by your question. Sometimes my mods don't see a question. So if you're not sure, tag them and ask, did you get my question? Because there's been times where people have said, hey, I put a question in, but I didn't address it. It may be because my moderator just didn't see it. So if you're not sure, ask them and they'll confirm whether or not they have it. So yeah, just a thing on that. All right. That's it, guys. Thank you for joining me. Usual spiel. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe. Get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. So if you guys can do me a solid and like, share, subscribe, I'd certainly appreciate it. Again, hopefully we can get this out, warn people, and get the gospel to as many people as we can. So please like, share, subscribe if you would be so inclined. Also, make sure to follow on Rumble and Telegram if you have those platforms. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be backup live streaming over on Rumble. Telegram, we post updates, announcements, and other little things that we can't necessarily put in video format. I throw up on Telegram. So if you have those platforms, feel free to follow along. If not, no worries. Just make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything happening with the Wretched Watchmen world of things. You'll find the latest podcasts and live streams, announcement page, free book to download, and all that jazz can be found there. So make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. And if you guys like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel's not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. It runs solely off of your guys' generous donations. Again, we're able to do all of this for free to reach out to all the people that we can and give everything that we can for free because of you guys. Your donations and your prayers are just incredible. Such blessings. I thank the Lord for all of you guys and your support. So thank you for that. Those links are below regarding that. And just a reminder, today is Good Tuesday. Tomorrow is Passover. And it's awesome that this year's Passover actually coincides with the timeline of biblical counts. Pretty interesting. So yeah, just keep that in mind tomorrow. Our Lord gave his life for us so we may have life. We need to make sure that we not only recognize that every day, but tomorrow is a standout day for us to really recognize that. So thank you, Lord Jesus, for your sacrifice and for your resurrection. Praise the Lord. All right, guys, thank you for joining me today, and I'll catch you guys on Saturday if the Lord does not come back, which I pray he does. But if not, see you guys right back here. Peace out. Maranatha.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.